Centennial Prayer for the Courts. Almighty God, we stand in your holy presence as our supreme judge. We humbly beseech you to bless and inspire us so that so that we think, say, and do will be in accordance that you will. Enlighten our minds, strengthen our spirit, and fill our hearts with fraternal love, wisdom, and understanding, so we can be effective channels of truth, justice, and peace in our proceedings today. Guide us in the path of righteousness for the fulfillment of your greater glory. Amen.
In the Circuit Court of Tayug, Pangasinan, Philippines, Plaintiff versus Criminal Indictment number 778, Dan Ervin Binluan and Marinel Nobleza. There are two types of legal proceedings that make up the justice system in the Philippines. One involves criminal cases, in which the state is the plaintiff and which the defendant is a person charged with having committed a crime. The other type of case is what is known as a civil case, in which private persons, corporations, other legal entities, or even government agencies can be either the plaintiff or the defendant, and which is a legal proceeding to resolve private disputes among the parties. Criminal cases always involve allegations of crime. Civil cases involve private disputes, such as claims that against a person, company, or someone else for injury to the plaintiff. Today on is a criminal case in which the state has accused both Dan Ervin Binluan and Marinel Nobleza of 2 counts, with count 1 being the unlawful possession, sale, or distribution of prescription drugs, and count 2 involuntary manslaughter.
All rise. This court is now in session.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a criminal case alleging that on February 21, 2022, defendants Dan Ervin Binluan and
Ate,
Marinel Nobleza illegally possessed, distributed a controlled substance, Ritalin, that is our central nervous system stimulant known as amphetamine, and that they are also guilty of involuntary manslaughter, of giving some of the medication of a friend who was then involved in an automobile accident that caused her death. You will be instructed on the law at the end of this case. You need to know from the outset, however, that is it up to the state to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that its defendant is guilty, as charged in the indictment, based solely in the evidence you will hear in this case, and not based on any preconceived notions of guilt or innocence of the parties, or anything you may have read in the past about Dan Ervin Binluan and Marinel Nobleza. The first part of the trial is what is called voir dire. Voir dire means to speak the truth, and it is the time of the trial when I must determine whether or not each and every juror is free of prejudice and can render a fair and impartial verdict based solely upon the evidence that they hear in the case, not what they have heard or read in the media or saw on television or may have heard by hearsay or gossip. Therefore, I first want to know if any jurors have heard anything in the past or read anything about either Dan Erwin Binluan and Marinel Nobleza.
No, Judge. If yes, raise your hand. That's what to know.
Is rich and every juror are willing to take an oath, the highest form of promise that a citizen can give, that they will render an impartial verdict based solely on the evidence.
Yes.
All right, then let me explain to the jury the different parts of the trial. Because the state must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, it is up to the state to proceed first. So you will first hear the opening statement of the state's attorney, and then you will hear the opening statement of the attorneys for Dan Erwin Binluan and Marinel Nobleza. After opening statements, you will then hear the state's witnesses. And after that, either or both defendants may call any witnesses they chose. Any witness called by any party may be cross-examined by any other party. After you hear all of the evidence from the witnesses, you will then hear the closing arguments. First from the state's attorney, and then from the attorneys for the defendants. After the closing arguments are completed, I will give you instructions on the law to help guide you in your deliberations. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
The defendant, Dan Erwin Binluan, ready to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor.
The defendant, Dan Erwin Binluan, ready to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor.
The state may proceed with its opening statement.
Statement, it is the duty to tell you what the evidence will be. I'll tell you what we will prove. We will prove that Dan Erwin Binluan and Marinel Nobleza were considered witty fools. They graduated from high school just last year, had a lot of friends, dressed well, and seemed to be the kind of young people who had everything going for them. Everything. That is until January 10th, 2022. That's when they found some prescription medication at their own home called Ritalin that was prescribed for their little brother, Ronjin Kakbay, who has attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity or ADDH, which is a drug you can only get with a prescription, and which is a type of drug which you will hear referred to this during this trial as an amphetamine, which acts as a stimulant to the central nervous system. Dan Erwin talked Marinel and her friend Mary Joy Bawag into trying some of the amphetamine pills with him. Both of them liked how the drugs made them feel wide awake and alert, and in the mood to party all night. But as you will learn from the witnesses we will call in this case, the effects of this drug, that feeling of alertness, of being wide awake, can change in a moment to make you feel sleepy, groggy, like your mind has become lost in a fog. It can affect your ability to drive a car or operate any other equipment or machinery. The unfortunate truth in this case is that Mary Joy Bawag took this drug after it was given to her by either Dan Irvin or Marinel Nobleza, or both. And when after a night of partying she was driving home, it made her drowsy. She fell asleep at the wheel and drove her car off Wheeling Hill. And most tragically, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she died from the injuries she sustained in that accident. All because she made that bad decision to take someone else's prescription drugs. Just taking off someone else's prescription drugs is illegal possession of a drug. And Mary Joy Abawag bad decision lead to the loss of her life. But she is not the only one who made the bad decision that night. Because if you sell or distribute someone else's prescriptions drugs to another, that of a controlled substance, and if that illegal act also causes someone else's death, you can also be found guilty of causing that person's death. So the other people who made the bad decision that night are the defendants, who are now on trial. And at the end of this trial, you will be asked to decide if each of them either possessed, sold, or distributed any of these controlled substances, any of which can constitute a serious offense, but the offense is worse, and the punishment increased. If not only possession is found, but the sale or distribution of an illegal drug to another is also found. But the most serious charge against the defendants in this case is that either one of them or both of them distributed a quantity of this controlled substance to Miss Mary Joy Bawag, causing her death. The court will instruct you at the end of this case what constitutes the charge of involuntary manslaughter. It is enough for you to know now that if a person by negligent or unlawful conduct causes another person to die, even if the person didn't mean to cause harm to them, that person can be found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. At the end of this trial, you will agree that not only are Dan Irvin and Marinel guilty of possessing and distributing this controlled substance to Mary Joy Abawag, they are both guilty of involuntary manslaughter in causing death of Mary Joy. Thank you for your attention.
Counsel for Mr. Dan Irvin Binluan, you may proceed with your opening statement.
Judge, ladies, the evidence will be that the state cannot prove that Mr. Binluan took these pills in the first place and can prove that he sold any to anyone. They can't even prove that he gave any to Mary Joy Bawag or Marinel Nobleza, or that it was this prescription medication that caused Miss Bawag to have the car accident that night. They also cannot prove that Miss Bawag even fell asleep at what the evidence will show is that amphetamines are Mr. Binluan not guilty of its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Defense counsel for Ms. Nobleza, you may give your opening statement.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, Marinel Nobleza is not a drug dealer. She was trying to be one of the ground by doing alone with her brother Ervin and trying one of the pills. She did not give Mary Joy Abuwag any choose pills than did. She loved Donna and Mary Joy, who she called Harper, like a sister. She even tried to save her at the hospital with her wizard's power. Also sadly learned in this case, wizard powers are powerless against bad decision or illegal drugs. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Marinel takes stand and admit in this case that she took one of the pills of her brother medication. So she will essentially be admitting that she's guilty of possession of an illegal drug. But she denies that she sold or distributed any of this medical to her dear friend Mary Joy Abuwag, and in the evidence will be that it was her brother Dan who gave Mary Joy in the medication, and that state will be able to prove beyond reasonable about that Marinel is guilty of anything except simple possession.
The state may call it first witness.
May call on Dr. Bernardo, Pangasinan County Coroner. Dr. Bernardo, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name.
My name is Dr. Bernardo.
You are the coroner for Pangasinan County,
Yes, I am.
and you did the autopsy on the body of Miss Mary Joy Abawag after her death.
Yes, I did.
What was the cause of her death?
Massive internal injuries that are traumatic nature and the result her single car accident when she lost control and plunged over Wheeling Hill.
Objection. It has not.
Judge.
Overruled.
What else did your examination disclose?
We also found that at the time of her death, she has prescription medication in her blood, retailing in amphetamine of the treatment of ADDH, the same drug that was the pill bottle recovered from Miss Marinel Nobleza or the accident, after the accident.
Doctor, how do amphetamines affect the body?
They generally are considered as stimulant, and they can help person who has been diagnosed with ADDH or certain others conditions focus their attention better. But in some instances, especially when the effects in the drugs start whereof it can make user very sleepy or groggy. and the drug start with that why we usually see warning in the label of the pill bottle that says do not drive or operate machinery while using this drug. What they say about the amphetamine, this is what goes up most common down, come down, okay, and that they are feeling not worth what they also call the downer, the feelings or the feelings of lethargy and mental fogginess that patients experience afterward, and sadly, no amount of magic and wizardry is going to change what science has taught in about effects of this drug.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of certainty as to whether the amount of that drug in Mary Joy Abawag's body would have affected her driving?
Most definitely, I have opinion. In my opinion, is most definitely I would have.
And do you have an opinion as to whether or not she became groggy or fell asleep when she was driving?
Objection. The doctor is not an expert in accident reconstruction. That opinion would be highly speculative.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Judge, we will be calling a reconstruction expert.
Very well, proceed.
No further questions.
May across examination for Mr. Binluan or Nobleza.
Victor, isn't it true for her to drive her car over Willing Hill?
Dr. Bernard, please answer.
Nothing is for sure, but it is most likely thing, unless the would be some evidence that she drove the of the hillside on purpose of which there is no evidence.
Well, you can't even rule out that she may have gotten tired and fallen asleep even without having taken this drug.
Again, that is a possibility, but unlikely. When we found the drugs in her system, most probably I did affect her, and most probably it was the cause of her erratic driving and death.
No further questions.
No question, Your Honors.
Please take down now. Next witnesses, please.
We call the family doctor, Dr. Cardena. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and occupation.
My name is Alexis Cardenas, and I am the family doctor for the Villuan family.
Let me show you the vial of pills recovered from Miss Marinel Nobleza the evening of January 10, 2022, when she and Don Irvin went to the hospital after they heard of the accident involving Mary Joy Bawag. Did you prescribe those pills, doctor?
Yes, I did.
For whom did you prescribe them?
They were prescribed for the younger brother, Irvin Marinel Ronjin, who was taking them for ADDH. See it has his name on the bottle.
How many did you prescribe for him?
30 pills, one for each day of the month.
When was the prescription filled?
January 10, 2022.
That means, as of January 10th, when this accident happened, there should have only been 10 pills missing from the original 30 if only Ronjin Kaakbay was taking them as prescribed.
That is correct.
Can you tell us how many are in the container?
There are only 5 left.
So, there are approximately 15 missing. That should be there.
Ida. Ida. Judge ka na, ikaw na lang.
Overrule.
That is correct.
Nothing further.
Attorneys for the Binluan, you may inquire.
No questions, Your Honor.
You may step down, doctor. Counsel, all your next.
State would call Ace Mabalot.
Please get.
My name is Ace Mabalot, but you can call me Ace.
What's your occupation, Ace?
Accident reconstruction expert. Been doing it for 10 years. Pretty good at it too. That's why they call me Ace.
Have you looked into the facts of this car accident?
Well, of course I did. That's why they call me Ace.
And do you have an opinion as to how it happened?
Well, of course I do. That's why they call me Ace.
What is your opinion, Ace?
No braking, no skid marks. Car not going perfectly fast, but enough to take out the guardrail. No sign of trying to stop the car to avoid hitting the guardrail. It would be my opinion that this person was not consciously in control at the time of the accident. Most likely fell asleep at the wheel.
Objection. Speculation.
Overruled.
No further questions.
No question, Your Honor.
Do the defense attorneys have any questions?
No, Your Honor.
You may be excused. Next witness, please.
I'd like to call Officer Kakbay to the stand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do states.
Would you please state your name?
Officer Ronjin Kaakbay,
Your occupation?
member of the Wheeling, Tayug, Pangasinan Police Department.
How long have you been on the force?
10 years and counting.
Did you have occasion to investigate the death of Mary Joy Abawa?
I did.
Can you tell us what you did on that night, officer?
Got a call 911 that there was an accident. Other patrol had already responded to the accident scene, and I was sent to the hospital to see the condition of the injured driver. When I met with the doctor of the two friends of hers were there who might be witnesses. So I spoke with them. They are the defendant here. Dan Ervin Villawan and Marinel Nobleza.
What did they tell you?
Well, they were both pretty emotional. Didn't tell me how much, but Dan Ervin Villawan reached in her purse and took out this bottle of pills we have here and handed it to me. She was crying real hard and kept saying she didn't give Miss Abawag any of these pills. Just keep saying it. Said she didn't want her to die. Said she tried to save her with some wizard powers, but nothing helped. And she just kept crying. Mr. Bilwan didn't say anything to me, only that he wanted to speak with an attorney.
Miss Nobleza gave you the pills, not Mr. Dan Ervin Binluan.
No, it was Miss Nobleza. I'm sure of that. Keep saying that. I didn't give her pills. I did not give her the pills.
Thank you, officer. Your Honor, we have no further questions for this witness, and we have no further witnesses. So at this time, the state rests.
First, do the defendants have any questions for this witness?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Officer, can you step down? Now, as defense counsel, which will be going first?
We will, Your Honor. And we be brave. We call Dan Binluan to the stand.
Do you swear that to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Judge. Ms. Nobleza, I know that as a person charged with a crime, you do not have to take the stand and testify.
I do.
Have you have discussed this with your attorney and want to voluntarily take this stand?
I have discussed it and I do want to take a stand.
Well, then proceed, counsel.
Can you tell me about the night of January 10, 2022?
So Irvin and my good friend Mary Joy and I were at a party, and Irvin came up to us both and said he found some pills of our brothers that gave you a nice high, and we were willing to try one. Well, at that time, I thought Irvin was being so cruel and I didn't want to look afraid in front of him. You know, being my big brother and all, and so I said, sure, I'll try one. And then Mary Jo said, okay, me too. So we both took one. I knew it was wrong. I learned that in WALS mock trial program back in grade school. I learned that taking prescription drugs from someone else was illegal and giving them to another was also illegal. But I wasn't thinking clearly that would save me from anything bad. And I just wanted to fit in. So I went along. I know better now. I have grown up a lot since then. I know I have to take responsibility for my own actions. That's why I decided to come into court today and testify and tell the jury exactly what happened that night, even if it means that I'm admitting to being guilty of a crime myself, the illegal possession of a controlled substance.
Did you tell the officer on the night in question that you didn't give her the pills?
Well, I said I didn't give her any of the pills. I only took one. I think she only took one. At least that's what I thought. I didn't really see what Irvin handed her.
Counsel for the state, you may inquire.
Miss Nobleza, why are you the one who had the pill bottle in your purse when the police arrived at the hospital that night?
Irvin is always so cool, but when we learned what had happened and we went to the hospital, we were both so upset. Couldn't even talk. Irvin told me about it. I hardly ever saw Irvin cry, but he cried that night. And I told him to give the pills, that I was going to give them to the police. He gave them to me and I put them in my purse and then give them to the officer when he arrived at the hospital. And I don't think Irvin said another word to me or the officer that night.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Counsel for Mr. Binluan.
If you and Miss Bawag only took one pig, why were there 16 missing?
I have no idea.
Do you have any witnesses? Also, Mr. Dan Erwin Binluan give you the bottle of pills at the hospital?
Not that I'm aware of.
Just to believe that you're not the one who gave.
I did not give her the pills. I did not. Irvin did, and I'm sorry to say it because he is my brother. But that is the truth, and I gave an oath to tell the truth.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You may step down, Ms. Nobleza. Now, Mr. Binluan will there be any witnesses on your behalf?
We will not be presenting any further witnesses, Your Honor.
Very well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we will now hear closing arguments. First, on behalf of the state, are you ready to proceed, counsel?
Yes, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is an open and shut case. It is unlawful in the state of Philippines to possess or distribute a controlled substance. And prescription amphetamines are a controlled substance unless they are possessed or distributed pursuant to a valid prescription by a medical doctor. Illegal drugs are not just cocaine or crystal meth or even marijuana. But prescription drugs themselves are illegal if distributed or taken without a doctor's prescription. There is a good reason for this. Prescription drugs can be as powerful as other drugs. We always think of as illegal if they are abused by people who do not have a prescription. In this case, Ms. Nobleza has admitted to illegal possession of this controlled substance. Mr. Vinduan has argued the state cannot prove any charge against him beyond a reasonable doubt. But the fact of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you believe Ms. Nobleza's testimony in this case, she is still guilty of possession and Mr. Vinduan is also guilty of possessing this controlled substance. But according to her testimony, Ervin is also guilty of distributing this drug to Ms. Nobleza and Ms. Abawag, and of involuntary manslaughter for causing Ms. Abawag's death. On the other hand, if you disbelieve Ms. Nobleza and believe she was the one who distributed the controlled substance to Ms. Abawag, then you may find her guilty as well of distribution. And of involuntary manslaughter, you may also find on this evidence that both of them possessed and distributed this controlled substance. And so, both are guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Now, we shall hear from Mr. Nobleza, counsel.
Thank you, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the only thing the state has proven because Ms. Nobleza admitted on the stand, she illegally possessed a controlled substance. She did not sell it. She did not distribute it. She didn't give any pills to Mary Joy Abuwag. You saw her testify. She had to testify against her own brother. You saw her cry. It was difficult for her. But did you not consider her a most credible witness? And yes, you may under choose circumstances are guilty in this case of possession, but based on this evidence, you cannot find her guilty of any of other counts. Did not cause her friends dead. She loved her friend and came into court and told you exactly what happened for only two reasons. She had the responsibility to do so, and because what she told you was the truth.
Counsel for Mr. Binluan, you may proceed with your closing statement.
Thank you, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state has not proved beyond a reasonable doubt any of the charges against Mr. Binluan. Marinel is the one who had the bottle of pills in her purse at the time of the police investigation. Other than her testimony, who's to say she didn't get Max pills at the home herself and was the one who gave one or maybe more than one pill to Mary Joy. Remember the testimony that there were about 15 pills missing from that bottle, not just a few. Remember, it doesn't matter if Marinel love Mary Joy, and tried Mary Joy with her wizard powers. We all know how deadly prescriptions drugs can be. No magic wand is ever going to change the reality of what happened that night. And remember, we have only heard from Marinelle. She's the only one that says it was Binluan who distributed the pills. The only one who said it was Binluan gave any pills to Miss Mary Joy. And says she thinks it was just one. Is that the truth? She may just be trying to save herself because the state has not proven its case against Binluan beyond reasonable doubt. You must find my client, Dan Binluan, not guilty of all charges.
It is now time for me to instruct you in the law of this case, after which you will be asked to deliberate and determine if the state has proven its case against either or both defendants beyond a reasonable degree of doubt. The jury is further instructed that amphetamines are a controlled substance and that unless distributed and taken pursuant to a valid prescription of a medical doctor, it is unlawful to possess, seal, or distribute such as a controlled substance. In addition, in West Virginia, involuntary manslaughter, causing the death of a person by a negligent or unlawful act whether or not is it the intention of the defendant to cause harm. So if either Mr. Daniel Binluan or Miss Nobleza or unlawfully distributed substance to Miss, which caused her to lose control of her car and die. Binluan are guilty of involuntary manslaughter. If you find beyond the doubt distributed this drug, you are further instructed that when you enter the jury room, you shall first pick a foreperson, and when you have reached a verdict, you may press the buzzer and return to the courtroom, of which time the foreperson will read the verdict in open court to deliberate. Minutes. Will the foreperson of the jury please stand? Have you reached a verdict?
We have not, Your Honor.
Will the defendants please stand?
They read verdict below or from their verdict form. As to each charge, check whether guilty or not guilty. As to charges against Mr. Binluan, Your Honor, we find as follows. Possession, guilty. Distribution, guilty. Involuntary manslaughter, not guilty. As to the charge against Miss Nobleza, we find as follows. Possession, guilty. Distribution, guilty. Involuntary manslaughter, not guilty.
So say you all.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, jurors, for your service. Hope you all have enjoyed learning about the criminal justice system. And you may now ask questions. Script written by Patrick S. Cassidy, President of the Walsh Foundation, 2010. The Walsh Foundation. Verdict Form 5.
As to the charge against Mr. Ervin Villan, Your Honor, we find as follows. As to count 1, possession. We find the defendant, Mr. Vinluan, guilty. Distribution of controlled substance. We find the defendant, Mr. Vinluan, guilty. Involuntary manslaughter. We find defendant, Mr. Vinluan, not guilty. As to the charge against Ms. Marinel Nobleza, we find as follows. Possession, we have possession, we find the defendant, Ms. Nobleza, guilty. Distribution of controlled substance, we find the defendant, Mr. Vinluan, guilty. Involuntary manslaughter, we find defendant, Mr. Vinluan, not guilty.
Case closed.